Good morning, good night, and every hour in between. Welcome back to the place where celebrity stories are treated like living, breathing tapestries. You're watching Turkish Spotlight Secrets, the channel that refuses to rush your heart or insult your mind. We take our time, we listen for the pauses between words, and we honor the fragile threads that connect two people across years, across distance, across pride. If this is your kind of storytelling, make sure you're subscribed, ring that bell so you don't miss a single chapter, and if you want to stand closer to the fire, consider becoming a member. That little join button is more than a button, it's how we keep the lights on and the questions sharp. Tonight, our lens turns toward a story that millions have held close, the kind of story you don't just watch, you feel. We're talking about Elçin Sangu and Baris Arduç. To the untrained eye, they're just beloved stars with a history of on-screen magic. But you know better. You know this has been a saga, sparks that refused to cool, long silences that said too much, and a single unresolved sentence that hovered between them like a promise, what if? In recent days, the silence cracked. Not with a spectacle, but with a nearly whispered admission that shook the room. An interview. A careful answer. And then, a meeting no one was supposed to see. Together, these moments ask one urgent question: can two people revise the ending everyone thought was written? The scene began innocently, the way these things often do, a morning show with bright lights, soft chairs, and questions you can usually answer in your sleep. Elçin sat there with the familiar mix of poise and warmth that audiences fell in love with years ago. The host smiled, the small talk flowed, new scripts, new roles, professional milestones. Then came the turn. A host, braver than most or simply unable to ignore what the audience was aching to hear, leaned in and asked the questions everyone else had asked in private. Did she watch Baris's recent interview? And more importantly, how did she feel about what he dared to say? There's a standard response for moments like these. A diplomatic smile, a compliment to keep the peace, a neat change of topic. That is not what happened. Elçin's smile wasn't evasive. It held the weight of years, of press tours, of rooms where the air said more than the people did. She took a breath you could hear, and then she crossed a line she rarely crosses. She said she doesn't usually open that door, but once in a while the heart is too clear to ignore. Yes, she heard him, she admitted. And yes, in her words, this feels like the right moment. Simple words, but they rang like bells. In the shadow of their shared history, a sentence like that doesn't offer a tidy answer. It offers a door. Is it a door to repair what went quiet? To finally articulate truths that sat in their throats? Or to accept that a bond can evolve without disappearing? Before we go further, our court of feeling and reason, what did you hear in her voice? An opening, or a closing? Tell us in the comments, because your conversation keeps Turkish Spotlight Secrets alive and helps this community find others who crave depth in their gossip the way you do. To grasp the weight of her calm confession, we have to rewind and look at Baris's side of the timeline. In his own recent interview, he let the polished armor of the leading man slip. His voice carried that break you don't fake, his eyes turned to the side like someone listening to an old memory. He spoke about the people life brings to teach you lessons, and then, the rare ones who don't leave your mind, not after projects wrap, not after seasons change. It wasn't a headline-ready quote. It was a quiet fracture that told on him. The internet didn't catch fire because it was scandalous. It sparked because it was true. Anyone who has ever loved and let go, and kept thinking anyway, recognized it instantly. That openness lit a path. It made space for an answer. And on that morning show, Elçin answered, not with gossip, but with courage. She went further still. She admitted she doesn't know what shape the next chapter takes, but she's willing to find out. She named the old enemy, fear. Fear of the cameras, fear of the intensity, fear of losing yourself in something that burns too bright. Then she did something rare, she forgave time. Time, she hinted, hadn't starved what they had, it had clarified it. If their winter served as incubation rather than erasure, perhaps the thaw is here. The live chat was a tidal wave. The hopeful shouted that it was long overdue. The romantics wrote novels in the comments about inevitable love and restless gravity. The skeptics reminded everyone not to trust the show business playbook. Yet there was a hush in the studio no PR team could stage, a tremor in her honesty that made it hard to believe this was choreography. Carefully measured? Of course. Scripted? Not like that. If the broadcast was the public stage, what followed belonged to a different genre entirely, the noir romance you read in a single sitting, the scene you tell only to close friends. Within an hour of that interview, the machinery of rumor began to turn. Reports placed Baris at a small café near the station, a tucked-away spot with windows that catch the morning light and corners that let you disappear. He arrived not long after she left. And he wasn't empty-handed. People noticed a small box in his grasp, tiny enough to be nothing, meaningful enough to be everything. Was it a token? An apology wrapped in velvet? Or a keepsake that says, "I remember when we were brave"? Inside, amid the clatter of cups and the sigh of milk steamers, witnesses say they found each other. A secluded corner, no grand gestures, and an intensity that pulled the air thinner. They didn't fill the silence with laughter. They didn't play to the room. This wasn't a reunion for show, it was two people speaking a language only they knew. A witness, careful not to intrude, said their eyes did the heavy lifting. The kind of look that finishes sentences. The kind that asks, "Are we doing this again?" The kind that answers, "I never stopped." They shared something warm, they spoke too softly for anyone to catch the words, and when they left, they slipped out the side door like people protecting something delicate. That discretion says more than any post or headline, bold in public, tender in private, the way real reconciliations begin, if they begin at all. By nightfall, the story moved to the arena where modern love declares itself, the feed. Elçin posted a story that could have been a manifesto for those who don't perform their hearts for clicks. No faces. No tags. Just a dark screen with simple white text. Sometimes, it only takes a truthful talk and a steady gaze. For those who had tracked the rumors, this felt like a seal. She acknowledged the conversation without naming it, and she did it in the only way that made sense, carefully. Baris, true to the quieter rhythm he's been keeping, didn't say anything that night. He let silence stretch, on purpose. The next day, he posted a black and white photo, thick clouds with a thin blade of light cutting through. His caption was sparse, "Where light shows up, there's a way forward." 2 posts, 2 halves of a dialogue. She named the meeting, he named the mood. Together, they suggested the storm might be lifting. The press did what it always does, it tried to write the ending in the first paragraph. Some outlets asked if this was closure dressed as reconciliation. Others leaned into poetry, declaring that a love that refused to fade had boiled back to the surface over coffee. Meanwhile, a friend close to Elçin, speaking without attribution, offered context that sounded less like gossip and more like truth. She never stopped keeping him in her thoughts, the friend said. Sometimes people have to part to discover who they are, and only then can they understand what they have. And fate, or the industry that likes to imitate it, added another twist. The network that hosted the morning interview teased a special year-end broadcast and sent invitations to both. No confirmations. No denials. Just a possibility big enough to send their fans into joyful chaos. A televised moment, even if it's nothing more than shared space and careful smiles, would be the kind of closure, or commencement, that turns into a cultural memory. Comments poured in, if they sit together, it will be the moment of the year. Others demanded on-air honesty. Say what you've been saving. Let us see it written on your faces. Beneath the glitter, the reason this resonates feels simple. We all want to think second chances aren't myths. We want to believe time doesn't always erode, sometimes it refines. We want words, when they finally come, to stitch shut what silence left open. On a radio appearance days later, when a host tried to pry a definitive answer from Baris, he played it soft and sly. He smiled, tossed a riddle into the room. One reply can change the whole book, and left it there, like a breadcrumb for the patient. Meanwhile, Elçin has been sharing fragments of poetry and lyrics that hum with rebirth, not erasure. One line landed hard: "It isn't always about forgetting, sometimes it's about remembering with new courage." That's not nostalgia. That's evolution. That's what happens when two people decide to stop arguing with time and start learning from it. So what are we watching unfold? A graceful curtain call or the lifting of a brand new curtain? Is this the epilogue that gives peace, or the prologue to a story we thought was finished? If you ask us, there's a reason this doesn't feel manufactured. Real feelings rarely make a scene. They sneak into cafes, they choose side doors, they speak softly and trust the light to find its way through the cloud cover. Thank you for letting us walk you through this chapter on Turkish Spotlight Secrets. If this touched you, if you find yourself rooting for clarity more than spectacle, tap like, leave your reading of their words in the comments, and share this with someone who still believes in timing. Don't forget to subscribe and consider joining as a member so we can keep bringing you the kind of storytelling that treats your attention with respect. Until our next rendezvous, keep your heart tuned to the quiet possibilities, and listen for the sentences that change everything when someone finally dares to say them.